All right. Well, thank you, Anu. So I hope everything should be fine. The sound should be fine, and my screen is visible. So I haven't even cloned the project yet. I was watching Anthony finish up. If you have any problem on the sound, please let me know. So let's clone these and install the dependencies and hoping to get some time to explain in between. All right. So I'm just gonna run and install. Wait. So
Hi, Eduardo.
yes.
Yeah, before we begin, maybe zoom in a bit on the code and everywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't opened the code yet,
Okay,
but I
okay,
can.
sure. Thank you. Just a reminder. Yeah, please continue.
Uh, is it? Oh, it has a lock. Okay, so it's npm. Wait, okay. So the idea is going to be about how do we use a store. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the usages of a store. We're going to use Pinia, which is the official store solution for Vue right now, which I wrote myself. And let's pull up the site. And we're going to talk a little bit also about when should we use it, when we should not. So hopefully it also gives you a better idea of when to use it, so you don't overuse the stores and complicate your life more than it should be, because that's the main issue I see most of the time, right? People tend to overuse the store because it gets very convenient to just have the state accessible anywhere in the application. But sometimes you don't want to have that. Now, the reasons behind that can go a little bit deep. So we won't go too far into the details. We're just gonna go a little bit into some of the examples of do and don'ts. So I have the documentation open here. I'm gonna zoom a little bit if I can. Come on, you zoom. So documentation is available at pinia.vue.js.org, or if you just Google it, you're probably gonna find it. And I just wanna go through some of the, well, the concepts of a store and also the main points of the API that we're gonna use. So it's more fluent while we write the application. Now, the idea of Pinia is really to extract the state that is not meant to be in any of your components. So we can call it some kind of global state, put it in what we call a store, and then be able to access the store in any component. And so in this way, you decouple the 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 life of the state from components, because you see usually when you have a component what do we have? We have the boards. I think I haven't even run the project. Let me see if we can turn on the project, open it up. What do we have? So we have the boards, small scroll issue here. And so if we try to upload to add a board, I don't know what's the part that was done. When we are in a page, we have some local state that is modified through the interactions of the user, right? And so usually this state belongs to the page component or some of the components that you use within that page component. So when you leave that page, anything you used there gets cleared out of the memory of the web page. So you don't have to worry about that because JavaScript doesn't have a manual memory management system. But when you have a global state management, your state never goes away, which is intentional. That's the whole point. But you also have to think about that when you put things into it, right? You don't want to have an ever-growing state that gets out of control and eats too much memory of the tab of your users. And so things that you usually don't want to put in the store includes some of the UI specific to page, which is funny because we're gonna put something that is UI specific, but it's global with the alerts, but it's more about some of the forms, right? Unless you have a very complex forms that spans over multiple pages and you really need to save that form information throughout the different pages, you probably don't want to save the whole forms state into the store, right? So what is the basic API, how does it look like? So we have this package Pinia that we're going to install, which, by the way, I should install. Let me just take a look at what do we have here. Oops. What do we have? Vue Apollo, Vue use, GraphQL, Lodash, UID, Vue router. Okay, so we don't have Pinia. So we're going to install Pinia as a normal dependency here. So just npm install, or if you have any from Anthony, who just spoke right before me, you can just run that instead. No -d because it's not a dev dependency, it's a normal dependency. And so we're going to import from that dependency anything we need. And we don't need too much. We have a function defined store, which is going to be the main function we're going to use from Pinia. We're going to use that create Pinia as well, but that comes a little bit later. So define store allows us to create now, or rather to define a store. And it's defined because what we get is not the actual store itself, it's a function that returns the store. And the reason we have that is because this allows us to completely modularize all the stores so that every single store is dynamically registered whenever you need it. Now, this is something you could do in Vuex before, but you have to do it manually, right? And so here it works out of the box. You don't have to do anything at all. It just comes with the way you use it, which is pretty neat. And so this function defined store is going to take two arguments. The first one is going to be a unique ID for the store. This means that you cannot define multiple stores with the same name. And then you have two possibilities. And if we have time, we're going to see the second one later on. But the first possibility is an object that looks a lot like components with the options API, where we have multiple properties. We have the state, which is going to be a function that returns the initial state of that store. Then we have the actions, which are just going to be methods on the store. And we have getters, which are going to be computed on the store. So basically computed of the state of the store. It really maps to a component without a template. Like every concept we have in a store is pretty much the same as a component, but you don't have a template. So you can create as many stores as you want. You can even use a store inside of the other by using the store inside of an action. So you can call this function inside of an action and use that store inside of another one. We won't be doing that today. We will be just doing one single store. That will be enough. So what else do we have? The getters, I think, are not here. This is the other version of this is the setup. What are we using? Script setup? What are we using? Let's see. What is the app? Like okay. The navbar, the drawer. Show me something else. Oh, script setup. Okay. So we're going to be able to call the use function, the use store function right inside here. There are ways of using it without the composition API, by the way. You just have to look them up. You have map stores. You have usage without setup here. So there is a whole page about it. It doesn't get very complicated. It's just the same as Vuex. Basically, you have map helpers to make your life easier. All right, so the concepts are pretty much the same as Vuex. All right, so we have the state, which is same as data, same as ref, same as reactive, if you have used it, but global. So it's not connected to a specific page or a specific component. And what we have is a function that returns the initial state. That way it can be created lazily as well. Then we have the getters, which we have a whole page about it, but it's just the computer properties, okay? There is every single rule you know about computer properties, you apply the same for the getters. And the way we define them is with functions that take as an argument the state, so whatever you define here, and then you return anything you want. If you want to access other states, you can do that, but you have to use a regular function and you access everything through these, which is going to be the same for actions. And there is one thing important to note is that you should always, if you use this syntax, you should always type, if you're using TypeScript, of course, the return type. This is because otherwise, there is no way for TypeScript to figure out the type of these. And now you're going to see that one of the benefits of using Pinia as well is that all the types are inferred. It means that even if you don't write in TypeScript, you're going to get types working out of the box, which is pretty neat. And it's a very low effort to get everything working correctly with TypeScript. So this I mean, the this as the context in JavaScript, as we call it, you're also going to see it in actions. Now, in actions, you have access to the whole store with these. So it means that you can call any other action you want. You can call the state, you can change it, you can read a getter, anything you want. And so the these you get here is actually the exact same as the return value of the useStore function. Okay, so remember I said that when you call useStore, you get a store instance. Now that store instance is going to be the same as the these, as you can imagine. Same for getters, by the way, except that in getters, you shouldn't rely on actions. You should only rely on state and getters. That's the point of a computer property. Shouldn't have any side effects, right? So the same rule applies for getters. Anyway, what else do you need? I think this is everything we need in terms of basics to get started. We have all the concepts like plugins and server-side rendering, but we won't get into that today. So what we're gonna do is bring the editor here. I think we're going to use Kendo UI. So that's why I have the documentation open on the side. So I just search. I know we're going to use a notification system, and we have Kendo UI. So we have this Kendo UI native notification. So basically, it's going to be a little small boxes that appear in the screen. So here they only have one of each, and they appear like this. But I believe they have a few options which do not appear here because this is just an overview. All right, not here either, but we should get positioning. All right, I want to check the options. Now that I need to know them because I have a tweet on the side, so I can check them out, but it's more for you. All right. So I'm going to start by just displaying one simple notification, all right? And from there, I'm going to make that dynamic, and I'm going to connect the notification to a store where I can have all the notifications in a way that any component from any page can use the store to create any notifications, okay? That's the idea, and that's why the store makes sense, is because the notification system is something that cannot be bound to any specific page. It really is global, okay? So we have Pinia, we have a drawer, and we're gonna put a new component here. Now, in app, so the notification has to be over everything, right? So app is the top level component. So here is where we want to put a component that displays all these notifications. So we're gonna call these alerts, and I think we call them the alerts. And I need to create this component, of course. I'm gonna create it here. The alerts.view. So now I can import it. So here, just alerts would be good. But I think I don't have a clear config. I'm gonna mess up everything if I do the format. I think I'm gonna copy a small. Yeah, I'm gonna copy a small pre config here because otherwise I'm gonna just change every single file I go through, and probably gonna make people mad. So let's add the PTRC and some help here. Ignore as well. Next year. There you go. All right. So I don't even need to commit them. It's just so it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to use false and here true. It's not my favorite style, but as long as something can do it for me, I don't really care. So I was doing the drawer, the alerts. So here, I'm going to start by writing that template, no title, thank you. And I'm going to take the example from here. So we have the source, and we're going to see that we need 3 components actually. Pop-up, because we have a fade, which is for animation, the notification, which is every single box you see, but we also have a notification group, which is probably going to style everything out. All right. And so we can import everything from there. I'm going to copy these. I don't really need to write them manually. So script. Yes, see that. That way they just work. All right. An empty template for the moment. And we're going to copy the same thing, I guess. Probably need the group as well. I don't really know the options of it. So I'm just gonna check how these works. We can align a little bit more on the bottom. And yeah, let's just have one single application like this, and then we can go from there. All right. So I think that we probably also need some div around here, just to make sure that we are over everything. So I think we have tailwind, something similar. So I'm gonna just use z, okay? So as an index of -10, that way we don't have a, what do you mean? We have auto import? I don't think we have auto import to components. Yeah, we don't need to. Yeah, but I need to import these ones. Components is just for the ones that are defined in the component folder. I mean, it doesn't matter. I guess, yeah, we can remove these. Doesn't seem to bother. Yeah, you're right. Lars is right. So, all right, going back to the alerts. So what do we have here? Notification group. I'm gonna put these a little bit further from the bottom. Click start. Sounds good. Appear success. So I think appear is always true. So we want to always display the notifications. It won't change too much right now, but it will change later. And notification, closable true, unclose success. So we won't do anything yet here, but we will definitely need that later on. And here we have the stun. All right, and as you can see here, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, but we have our first notification appearing on the screen. All right, let's push it a little bit as well from the side. Yeah, now it looks better. We can click close, but it doesn't do anything because probably we need to implement something here. All right, everything following along. Do we have any questions? The backend. So there's a question about the stores. The question says the backend API data, for example, we get for a dropdown in the form. Should we store it in the global store? And the answer is going to be it depends. I would say most of the time no, but there are some cases where you actually want to store this kind of information in the store, especially if you don't have any, if you use it across multiple places. But I think that for this kind of thing where you get it from an API, you can probably rely on cache, server-side cache, or client-side cache, or both. So using something like Vue Query or just your own version, your own composable, and to avoid having to rely on a store for that. You can put it in a store if you're comfortable with it. It's not like Pinia is heavy, so it's way lighter than Vue Query. So yeah, you could do that. All right, so what we want? So now what we want is to make sure that the notifications here appear based on a state that we have in the store And that store is going to allow us to also expose some functions where we can just add any other notification we want and also be able to close them. So let's increase the font size. It's already quite big. I don't know what I changed there, but there you go. So we don't have a store folder, I think. Yeah, so let's create a stores folder. So this time we have an S at the end of the word store. Instead of with Vuex, we only have one store. We have the root store. But with Pinia, we can have any stores we want. And so we're going to call these the alerts, I think, or just alerts. Yes. And here we're going to export. So export const use alerts, I think is the term we want to use. And we're going to call these define store, which I thought it was going to let me autocomplete, but it doesn't. Here, define store. All right. I give it an ID. We don't have any store here, so it doesn't change anything. And we're going to have an initial state. So I'm just using this shorthand, and Copilot is actually guessing the things. So we can have alerts. I think I'm going to name it something else. We can name it items, notifications, whatever we want. So let's totally call these notifications or items. Well, it's a very generic one, but. And so this is going to be the initial state. And then we're going to have some actions. So this is what our components are going to use. They're going to call the functions here to add any action. So for example, we're going to have a function notify, and this function is going to accept different options, and it's going to push in the array. So I'm going to disable this now. No, we'll disable later. All right. So we want to notify, we want to remove, and then maybe we can add some helpers because we have different styles of notifications. So here we're going to have remove. So that's going to be the close, and we're going to have to implement that later. I don't think we need any getter here because one of the things about Pinia is that you can access the state anywhere directly. You don't need to go. I mean, in Vuex, you could also do that, but in Pinia, you can also modify the state directly. It's up to you to choose the conventions you want to follow. So we're going to have to define a little bit the way the item. So I know that the notification has a few options which I couldn't find in the documentation because we were in the overview. Fortunately, I have them on the site. But basically, we have different types of notifications. So we have different styles, as they call them. So what I'm going to do is, in order to type correctly this array, and in order to properly type the way we notify, we're going to create a few types. So for example, when we notify, we want to pass a message and a style that we apply to the notification. So that's going to be a message that is going to be a string. Then we have the style, which is going to be something. So I'm going to put unknown because I don't know yet what I'm going to put. And then we have some extra options that apply to the notification. So we have things like, can it be closed? Does it close automatically? Stuff like that. All right, so I'm going to define also some options, which is probably going to be optional. Also unknown, yeah. Stop Copilot right there. And I'm just going to put an empty object or something. Okay, I have a lot of red here. What is the problem? I have an extra bracket. All right, so the types for the alerts or the styles are error, success. We also have warning, I think. There is an info, and there is also none, which is also possible style. I don't know if there is an undefined style or something. We're gonna see that later. So now I can type that here, other style, and I can start creating how an item So how a notification should look like. So it will contain all the information I need to use in order to display it here. Okay, so I probably have the text, some of the style here, and then an ID or something like that to recognize it. All right. So what do we have here? We need. So we're going to have probably an interface called alert, which is going to be the item here. All right. So this is going to be as alert. The reason we do these cast here in TypeScript is to tell. So TypeScript by default is going to infer, if we don't put the array as a never, I think. So an array that is always empty. By putting a type like this, we're safely casting an empty array into an array that can only contain alert. So everything else is going to be typed afterwards. And so the alert probably has a message, which is going to be a string. And we also probably want an ID. So the ID, you can actually put a number, anything you want. But if you want to look real pro, you can use a iterated ID, which is what we're going to do. Otherwise, just an incremented ID looks fine, honestly. So what are the other options we have? Apparently there is an option for being closable. So we have a closable, which is going to be a Boolean. We also have the timeout. So this is all from the Vue.js notification thing. The timeout is going to be a number or false, which I imagine is equivalent to infinity. So it never closes. And then we have a style, which is going to be alert style. All right, and I think, oh yeah, and apparently we can also provide and say that the message is actually HTML. So HTML is allows us to say, okay, hey, the content here is safe to be displayed as HTML. So basically, if it comes from the application and it doesn't come from the user, anything that comes from the user, it's never safe. So you never want to display it as HTML with VHTML, which is going to be the directory we can use. Okay, so these things here are what we call the options. And the things we have here are specific to the alert. So these four properties, I want them to be passed here. So I'm going to extract these into another interface, and I'm going to make alert extend from that interface itself. So alert options, and I'm going to paste all these things. All of them are optional, I think. So we're just going to put everything optional. And here I'm going to extend that interface. So that way we have everything going on. And now I can go back here and change the options into that. Since everything is optional, we can just put the empty object here. All right, so now we need to add the item to this thing. So here is when it gets interesting, right? So by accessing these, we can access everything in the store. So we have some functions that are useful. One of the most useful one is patch, which allows us to change a few things at the same time. But here we don't even have to bother about that. We can just call items.push, and we can push our own new notification. So we're gonna have the message, we're gonna have an ID, and we're gonna use probably gonna use just UID, I think. So yeah, it was inferring some stuff there. So let me just get the UID from here. So I think it's v4. Yeah, v4 has UID. We don't have the types. Not wait. So I guess wait. Oh yeah, I'm missing the thing. Or just other types. There you go. There you go. Type. So here ID, and I think it's just a function we call, and it gives us a string. Yes. Nice. So we don't need to add anything else to that. We're pushing to the array. And so here is where we can, I think I'm gonna move that up here. So I'm gonna have the ID. There we go. Oops. And that way I can also do a set timeout here. So the set timeout is going to allow us to remove the store. Now, I haven't implemented it yet, but we're going to have to do that later. So we only do this. I imagine we could have some default options also, like having a default timeout. So the idea is here, if I have, if options dot timeout doesn't equal false, which is a possible option, we set up a timeout. What happened here with my with the actual timeout? All right, it's going to complain about some stuff here. I'm gonna remove some of the red lines. I'm going to implement some default values that make sense. So here comes default options. We're gonna make this required version of alert options. Oops. So that way we have to declare every single option by making it required. So closable, I guess that's going to be true. The default option makes sense. HTML by default false, which is safer. Timeout, I think I'm gonna put something a little bit smaller. And the style, I guess, probably gonna be uniform. Yeah. All right. So now we have the default options, and here, instead of having a default value that looks like this, we can just have it here and say options equals we can say options equals, if it's undefined, it should still work, right? Yeah, that still works if it's undefined. So we have some defined options here, and here it becomes the type could have been better, but yeah, this is not. I mean, it doesn't complain. It cannot be undefined because we have default option here. I thought it will infer a better type there, but probably it's just a display bug. All right, so we have these things, and we probably want to add anything else here to the icon, so we can just add the options. We don't actually need to add everything, but it's fine. Do we need anything else? I think this should be enough to get started. Oh yeah, the style. Completely forgot about the style. Why do we put the style here? Probably more convenient, right? So let's just put, I guess, the style here. That way we also have it included here. All right. We could even make these the required other options, so that way we always have all the things. We could also just split these up into multiple declarations and make the object smaller. It's really up to you. I want to try these, so I'm actually going to go to app here. No, to alerts. I hope to get some bugs so I can show some other features and the debugging, right? So I get user alerts. Yes. All right. So this is not gonna work yet. All right, because we still need to install Pinia. So if I go here, we're gonna get some errors. We're gonna see, hey, did you forget to install Pinia? And I actually did, completely forgot to install Pinia. So I didn't show this part because I forgot. It's just, but we need to import functions here. It's very short. It's going to be create Pinia. And so here, we can actually plain some of the app used, and we can just call create Pinia, which is going to create a Pinia instance. Now, the Pinia instance is similar to the root store in Vuex, but actually very, very different. It has, it connects every single store together, all right? And it's the entry point for the application to be able to access any store. All right, let me just take the questions real quick because I need to look at you. So some people saying that they have issues like with Volar if they cannot use, they need GSX. Just make sure to have two things, because this can be very confusing. Usually, oh, they don't have, no. So there is a GS6 reserve here that you want to use. I think it's something I got picked in Volar because I don't actually have the problem, as you can see. But that was one of the things that you need to put sometimes. And just make sure that you're using Volar. Let me see, what else? Why do we need the style if it's already defined in option? A good question. I think it's just more convenience, right? We could also remove it from here with omit, with the type omit, but it's really about convenience, because most of the time, the most important things in an alert are the style and the message. These are the things you want to provide almost every time. And so that's why we have it as an argument instead of an object. But it's really up to you. If you want to have just one object with everything, that's totally fine too. All right, so now we can use the alerts. Now it shouldn't be giving us the error anymore. So we have other warnings here. But yeah, we have the notification here, which it's just not doing anything, but it's there. And now we can use the store. So here, oops, I get these alerts, which is the store. And as you can see, it has all the types. So here I have the item, and I can see that I have all the different properties of the store, okay? So I can use that directly here. I can say, I think it's in the fate. Yeah, because we want every single store to have an animation. So v4 alert in alerts.items. Probably gonna complain about the key, but we have an ID, so that's all good. And I don't think I need anything else here. Now what I need is to provide all the different things here, all the different props. I think that Vector is actually able to infer some of the things, but I'm not completely sure. So I'm just gonna go with what I know here. I know that the alert has a type. So, oops. Type, style, sorry. The icon, we always wanted closable. I don't know. Oh yeah, we have an alert closable. Why does it do this? Closable. And then when we close, we probably want to call the remove function that we haven't implemented yet, so it won't work. And now here, so here we can have the message. Now that is going to be alert dot, I don't know why it does that all the time, message. We did implement something for the HTML version, so we can also do that. So we can say if the alert.html, there you go, we can have the HTML alert.message. So that's gonna take over the full HTML div. And I think this is enough for us. So let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. We should be able to at least add them, right? So I'm gonna open the DevTools here because I think this is also one of the main points of Pinia. It's how the DevTools allows you to modify the items and everything. And I'm actually going to go through the components here. I have the alerts where I can see my store as well. We have some bugs in terms of display here in the DevTools because Guillaume has added a few features, and I haven't kept to his rhythm. But the interesting part is that if I click in a component here, I can access. I'm going to zoom a little bit. I cannot zoom more than that. I'm sorry. But here you have access to VM. All right. So VM is going to be the instance that we are on. And so that instance has access to everything, included the alerts. Now, it's not accessible directly. I mean, it's under proxy. And here we have the alerts. OK. So if you get a different display here, it's normal. It's because you have to configure what we call a custom formatter. So if you go into the options of Chrome, Firefox, whatever. At the very bottom, you have this thing, enable custom formatters. And that's what makes the reactive thing look like that. If not, it doesn't really matter too much. So here, the thing is, we can just look at everything, right? And we can also say, hey, notify with hello, and it displays here. So I have a few invalid things because apparently the style cannot be undefined, which makes sense because I did make the argument necessary. But let's try another one. Success, error. And just like that, we can just try out if what we made was working. And so right now, one thing I want you to notice, so they don't close, which is clearly a bug. I mean, it's not a bug, it's just that it implement the remove function. But the thing is, if I change, so I'm going to just save the store file, okay? I mean, let's just modify it. It's not really. I'm trying to see if it reloads. Okay, it doesn't really work. I thought it was going to reload the whole page, but it's even worse than that. If I add anything to the store, it's not going to update here. So if I go take a look to the Pinia store, I see that I only have items here. I have my 3 items that I added, but I don't have this new property I added. All right. So what I'm going to use is the hold module replacement. So in order to do that, I need to first check if we are in a hot environment, which just means, I mean, right now it's very hot in Paris. I don't know about your house. Here is 36 degrees. But if we have access to the dev development, right? And so we have this function. This is not going to work. We're going to write that allows us to accept updates, so we say. And so usually we have to write all this manual code to merge the new version with the version that we have and stuff like that. It's not $vm.alerts, by the way, it's $vm.proxy.alerts. Just I know that the warnings are a little bit annoying. The type doesn't work. See how I have the proxy here. And I'm gonna just check that later. What is the prop that I'm missing? The type. It says, what is that? Validator check failed, but it doesn't tell me what. Oh yeah, it's a style. No, because I have a style. No, I haven't. But anyway, it's weird because it does appear. Oh, it's just because it re-renders the other ones. So I think it's the first one that doesn't work. Anyway, if we want to have the hot module replacement here, we have a function called accept HTML update. So this comes from Pinia, okay? You actually have the comment here. Well, font is so hard to read, where you can see the actual code you need to do. So this is something you need to do in every single store you define. You don't have to, all right? Because you don't always need the HMR, and sometimes it can put you in a state that is not convenient, but it's very, most of the time, I'm gonna be honest, it's very convenient, right? Because you're just gonna edit the store, go back to the page, change anything, and it's going to update immediately, right? So here, we have to pass 2 things. Wait, this is the function? Except, actually, I thought it was different. I forgot. It's the kind of thing you write and forget. You write once and forget. So here the store is not use user, it's use alerts, and that's pretty much it. So when you write this line, here I need to reload the page, okay, because I wasn't using that store, I think. Maybe I didn't need to, but just to make sure. And so here, if I go to the state, I see that I have the items, right? And if I add anything else, flow through. If I add anything, I can see that it appears here immediately, okay? If I remove it, it also disappears. So, and the interesting part is that any updates that you're gonna make to the store are going to be reflected immediately. So it doesn't, you don't need to reload the page. And what's interesting is that the state that is already there doesn't get overridden by any state changes you do. So you can, for example, change the initial value here to false, but because the value already exists, in order to not mess up with the current state you have in the application, it's not going to change that value. Okay, so it just stays here as true. If I remove it and add it back, then in that case, it's going to change. All right, because that's different. Here, it doesn't change, but if I remove it, it disappears, and then I add it back, then that works, obviously. And this works for actions, getters, and everything else, okay? So that's the interesting part. So now we can code the remove part. So remove is going to be actually quite easy. We're going to just do a find and then remove that find index probably. Yeah, it says filter, but now we're gonna just use a splice. So the index, yeah, this is pretty much what I want to write. Find index with the item with the correct ID. And then we're going to check if the index is actually valid, because if it doesn't find the item, it's not going to, it's going to return -1. So anything positive is valid, and otherwise be careful, because if you have -1 and you do a splice, it's going to remove the last element on the array, which is not what you want. And so now that we have this function, we're going to call here again the notify. We don't need to reload anything. So we just click on that again, and I call that again. All right. And then here in the alerts, I can do close alerts.remove.alert.id. Perfect. And so unfortunately, it disappeared probably after 3 seconds, I guess. Yeah. So now, I can remove it myself. The close probably also happens with the timeout. It doesn't have any animation, which is weird. I mean, it doesn't have a disappear animation. Oh, because the v4 is here. Because it does fade only accept. I think I'm not gonna fix that part. But yeah, that's more of a bug. I mean, I imagine that the way they use the appear, I don't know if it's a transition group or a transition, although I can check that with DevTools if I want to. Let me do real quick. The alerts. Well, I never know, I guess. But well, let me try real quick. What if I have this here? Does it work? So I can just back here, and I can add. Oh, it doesn't animate anymore. So I guess, yeah, I think this is a, I will call this a misconception on the component library. It should probably be a transition group. Maybe they have actually one, but a transition group for that. The appear attribute only makes it trigger the animation initially, which by default isn't the case in Vue. You only trigger animations where something changes, but if it's created immediately, you don't want to have the animation. So no, the appear, it's good. It's what you want. Okay, so what else can we do here that is interesting? So as you can see, everything just work without reloading the page, all right? We are not reloading anything here. Everything is just working. We modify the remove function and it works. We can add other functions. So we can add some convenient actions like success. So that's going to be, thanks Copilot, it's going to have a message and an options, but it's not going to have the style. And then we're just going to call these.notify with the message and success and everything. Almost becomes too simple when done with the Copilot. Is it a good practice to return to refs and the rest of my method instead of declaring the getters, actions, etc.? To return to ref state. It's not a good or bad practice. It's just the other way of doing it. I think I don't have too much time left. We're running a few minutes late. Okay, so I won't be able to go into the setup version of these, which is also interesting, but a bit more complicated. I'm going to correct the typo here. I'm going to probably let Copilot just finish up the whole boilerplate because everything is just the same with different versions, and then the info up, then that's it. All right, thanks Copilot for the tedious part. What is the thing that reps? Yeah, there is another version that is interesting to note, the setup store. But also another thing that you can do that can be convenient in some cases, and then I will probably stop here. I hope they don't hate me too much. It's that we have a few functions. I'm running out of time, right?
No, I thought that you are done and I should ask questions. So if you are continuing, if you are still showing
I'm almost
something.
done.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
So one of the functions we have is store to ref. So here we are using alerts everywhere, all right? And one of the beginner mistakes that we can find people doing is this. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to extract alerts, okay? Sorry, items. Or anything else we want, all right? Like remove, modify, anything you want, all right? Now, if you do this, you may break the reactivity. For the actions, of course not. But for the state, if you do this, it's the same as if you have a reactive object. So something like obj equals reactive. And then here we have a counter, right? And so let's say you use the structuring to get that end property from the object. Here, what you get is the number at the time of the read. And so that value is not reactive anymore, right? It's just a number. It's not a reactive value that Vue is tracking, okay? So that's important to be aware of. So that's why we have these functions, store to refs, which allows us to extract anything that requires to keep that reactivity. So it's similar to refs. So this is advanced reactivity stuff. So don't worry if you don't, you haven't covered these. It's really into the Vue.js docs after all the normal stuff, you have the advanced reactivity part. You want to go real deep, and so it explains why we have these and how to get the most out of composables as well. Sorry, but here we can just so we need to pass the actual store instance, otherwise it's not going to work. We pass the store, and here we can get the items. And now here, items is no longer just an array; it's a ref. So we have the dot value happening here, all right? Now, one of the reasons you want to do this is when you are migrating from a code base that have already some properties declared. So imagine you have some const items equals something, all right? And so you're moving these to the store. And you don't want to change everything in the template, right? You can just change the data. So why would you change the template if you're not changing anything that is visual? You're only refactoring your code. So by using something like store to refs, you can just focus on that script part, all right? And you don't need to change anything you don't need to adapt anything on the template to make it work. So that's very convenient. And so the only thing you need to be aware of is that so store to ref only caters for computed and getters and state properties. Anything else, so that's why I only have items here, doesn't really apply, okay? You can do, if you want, you can extract any method, any action here, okay? So you can extract, for example, modify and remove, and that allows you to go here instead of using alerts, which, oh yeah, I named that store. So I can just do this, all right? And so this is useful because if you had the state locally previously, now if you move it to the store for whatever reason, you don't need to change the template anymore, all right? I know it's not the way we're showing the things right now, but that's how it works. So here, still without reloading the page, I should be able to, so this shouldn't work, right? And now if I do store, oh, come on, store, it works. And I also have just the notify function immediately, right? So just notify, yes. And I can do info as well if I want. All right, let me check real quick if I'm forgetting anything. Yeah, let's use it somewhere, right? We are not using any of the animations. So, oops. How do I go back to the boards? Let's just use the history, right? So here I'm supposed to be able to create new boards, and it says board created, and it logs it out. Now, let me check where that is done, right? So I'm just gonna check board created. I don't know where this file is, so I'm just going to use the DevTools. Useful thing also when you don't know where things are happening. I'm going to inspect actually the thing that creates the board. Oh, I can't, whatever. I have the index here, and I'm going to open this file with this button, and boom, we have the thing. And so here we have create board. And so create board just logs the board. And so instead, we're going to call alerts. We call use alerts. And here we're gonna say alerts.success and say board created. I don't think I need anything else. So here, now I have notification of it. And I think that wraps it up. All right, let me see if we have a few questions.
Awesome.
Pinia store subscribers. Sorry.
Thank you so much. It was awesome, and I think you already read the comments, but people are really like best teacher so far, wonderful tips and so on. So well, it's
really,
amazing.
Very nice. Thank you.
So we have some accumulated some of the questions, so we can ask you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone, yeah. So people want to know what are some advantages to managing notification in this manner as opposed to using a third-party notification library.
Well, that depends on the third-party notification library. No, I don't think there is any advantages or disadvantages. It really is just different. So it depends what the library is offering.
Yeah, and where we want the control to be in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, so the next question is: have you seen any anti-patterns for using Pinia?
Yeah, I think the same ones that apply for Vuex, right? You don't want to put everything in the store. You really want to keep the state that is local to components, either components as much as possible. Is there anything else? I did see a few ones.
Okay. Sorry.
I saw another question that was interesting is what is the store subscribers? So there is a function $subscribe that you can call on the store. It's pretty much a watcher. The difference with a watcher and a subscribe is that you can call it directly on the store. And if you call patch, for example, to group changes together when you modify a store, the subscribe is going to get called only once. And the watcher may be called multiple times depending on how you configure it. So if you make the watchers have a flush sync, meaning that it will immediately trigger anytime, so in a synchronous fashion, it will trigger every time you change the store. And you can do this with subscribe as well, because behind the hood, it's a watcher. So if you use a flush sync to always get immediate call of a function whenever the store changes, you can group multiple modifications within one patch. So that's interesting. But more than the subscribe, the on action, so the whole plugin page for Pinia is really interesting if you want to get a little bit deeper into how to augment Pinia stores.
Awesome. So there was one more question. Is it a good practice to return to ref state and the rest of my methods instead of declaring the getters and actions?
So that depends. If you use it's not a good or bad practice, but that only applies to setup stores, right? It's not about the option stores that we wrote, sorry. So it's all right. Like it's up to you if you want to define multiple refs or just one reactive object, and then at the end you return two refs. So you spread the two refs of the state as it was in the comment. It's not a good or bad practice. It's just a way to write it. It works and it's totally valid.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering, Eduardo. And really, this was a very amazing live coding session. We enjoyed a lot, and I'm sure people learned a lot today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So
good
also,
luck with the rest.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck with the rest. Is that?
And also for the audience who are asking, I think you will be pushing the code to the repo now, so they will have access in a while. Yeah. Thanks again. Thank you.